All right, we're going to jump right in and deconstruct one of the most mysterious, most debated prophecies in the entire Bible. It's just a single, powerful verse from the book of Revelation, but wow, does it pack a punch.
And when the 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison. I mean, come on, that has sparked so much speculation, so many predictions, and yeah, a whole lot of fear over the centuries. It sounds like the plot of some epic blockbuster movie, doesn't it?
So you hear that, and you probably think, okay, 1,000 years on a countdown clock, and then all hell breaks loose, literally. But what if that's not it at all? What if this isn't about a literal timeline, but something more symbolic, something that's already happened, and something that's tied directly to the core events of the gospel? Well, that is the big question we're diving into. To really get to the heart of this thing, we've got to take it apart, piece by piece. We're going to look at the 1,000 years, what it means for them to expire, and then, of course, what this loosing of Satan actually looks like.
So right off the bat, we hit this major fork in the road on how to understand the 1,000 years. Now, a lot of people see a literal future 1,000-year reign of Christ on earth, but the interpretation we're going to explore today sees it very differently. It sees it as a symbolic term for the entire gospel age, the whole era that kicked off with Christ's victory on the cross.
So let's start right there. If we're talking about a symbolic millennium, this gospel age, what in the world does it mean for it to expire?
In this view, when it says expired, it's not like a timer on an oven going off. It's not signaling the end of the world. Instead, it's marking a major prophetic transition, a huge shift in the spiritual landscape that happens within this gospel age.
And to really get this, we've got to go to the original Greek. The word used here is teleo. Now, this doesn't just mean to end. It means to complete, to fulfill. Sound familiar? It should. It is the exact same root word Jesus used on the cross when he cried out, "It is finished," tetelestai. This suggests that the 1,000 years aren't just ending, they're being fulfilled right when Christ completes his work of redemption. Okay, so that brings us to the really dramatic part, right? Satan being loosed from his prison. It sounds absolutely terrifying, but the context here gives it a very, very specific meaning. So, does this mean the floodgates of evil are just thrown open? Is this an unconditional, full-scale release of power? Well, according to this interpretation, no, not even close. The text itself actually puts some really important guardrails on this. This loosing is specifically described as being for a little season. So it's limited, it's brief, and it is permitted for a very specific purpose, to allow a resurgence of deception to go up against the truth. You know, this whole idea actually clicks right into another concept from the Bible. In 2 Thessalonians, Paul talks about a restrainer that's holding back full-blown deception. This loosing in Revelation is kind of like that restraint being partially lifted, but just for a short, appointed time. Okay, so this is all fascinating theology, but what does it actually look like in the real world? This is where it gets really interesting, because this interpretation gives us a solid historical anchor that happens right after the resurrection. Let's just walk through this timeline. First, at the cross, Christ wins the decisive victory. Satan is spiritually bound. Then, with the resurrection, the work of redemption is fulfilled. It's completed. And it is right at this moment that Satan is loosed for his brief season. Not to undo the victory, no way, but to inspire a very specific lie against it. And here is that exact lie recorded for us in the Gospel of Matthew. The religious leaders and the Roman authorities, they basically cook up a story and pay the guards to spread it. They told him, "Say ye, his disciples came by night and stole him away while we slept." This historical act of deception, this lie, that is the loosing of Satan. See? It's not some far-off future catastrophe. It was the beginning of the spiritual battle that the early church had to face from day one. It was the start of organized, official opposition to the single most important truth of Christianity, the resurrection. So what does all of this mean for us? If this period of deception kicked off 2,000 years ago, what's its purpose? And how does it all end? Well, this little season of deception is also called the patience of the saints. It's a time of testing, a time of endurance. And the church isn't meant to be a victim here. It's actually the time for believers to demonstrate their authority by standing firm in the truth, no matter what lies get thrown their way. So here's the whole arc in 3 simple steps. First, Christ wins the decisive victory on the cross. Satan's ultimate defeat is locked in. Second, a season of testing begins, where Satan is allowed to push this huge, deceptive counter-narrative. And third, The church endures and overcomes that deception, not with worldly power, but with the unstoppable truth of the gospel.
And this leaves us with a final, really powerful question to think about. If deception is a permitted and even prophesied part of the story, what does that tell us about the nature of truth itself? And how is it that truth ultimately triumphs in a world so full of lies?